Okay, guys, I was just recently asked if I could make a leather sheath. Simple answer to that question is relatively no. Reason being, I just don't have a whole lot of time. So I'm going to show you guys how to make one real quickly and easily. This is a piece of belly, cowhide belly. Decent thickness here. I'm not sure what the ounce rating is on this leather, guys, so I apologize for that. This is a dagger that we're going to be making a sheath for. Now, the way you do this is real simple, guys. You take your dagger or blade or whatever and draw the blade pattern. That is this. Now, I use pencil on this. Reason being is an ink pen is actually a form of leather dye, and I know I'm working the flesh side here, but if I wasn't working the flesh side, that even after you've dyed the leather, that ink line will still show up. So if you use a pencil, you can still see the lines a little bit. They don't show up real good because I've got some ink lines on here to kind of show you guys the difference. The lighter line is the pencil line, the darker line is the ink. So it's a little harder to see on camera, but when you're actually looking at it, it's not that tough to see. So then what you do is you need to trace out around that to a certain width, whatever width you want, which is going to be the stitching you're going to have. So normally what I'll do is about my fingertip long and extra length. So that's here. And then you just trace around where that dagger would go. And as you can tell, we're coming up on that pre-existing line. No, it was not planned that way. It just kind of worked out that way. So what you've now got is a plug of leather, once you cut this out, that you can use, but you can see there's plenty of room in here to do your stitching. Okay? So you'll cut out this piece just like it is. You'll make another piece identical to this and leave the, you'll cut out another piece identical to it, doesn't matter which side. Then you'll do another piece with a longer tail. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those pieces out and show you what they look like. Okay, guys, so here we have the pieces of the sheath. This is, like I said, you have two pieces that are almost identical, except this has a cutout for the blade itself to rest into. What that does is once you put your stitching in place, this leather plug will protect your stitching and keep it from being cut by the edge of your blade. So basically to assemble this is just this to this. If you've got some rubber cement, go ahead and use it. It's actually a really handy resource for this little project. Like so. And this longer piece is left longer intentionally so you can fold it over onto itself like that and run a line of stitching across here for a belt loop. And that's really all there is to making a sheath, guys. I mean, I can show you how to do the individual stitches and whatnot, but it's just, you just stitch the leather together and just make sure that whenever you punch through that you put holes through all three pieces, not just through two or in the middle or anywhere else. Just make sure that you stitch everything together. And like I said, it usually helps if you glue it in place. You can use rubber cement, contact cement if you have it. I just stay away from like the hard setting epoxies like Gorilla Glue epoxies or Super Glue or anything. But use like a flexible glue and you'll be just fine. Then you can just take whatever leather you have, dye it to the color you desire, and your dagger or knife will slip right in, just like that, and fit nice and snug every time. You may have to do some modifications, like here you can see I'll have to modify right in here and cut just a little bit, but that'll be dependent upon each individual blade that you make a sheath for. And really that's about it, guys. I mean, that's all it takes. So there you have it. Okay, guys, here's the finished sheath. Stitch it together, stitch this back. I can still dye this down. Now there's two more things that I'm going to do to this. One of them you won't actually see, but you'll get the idea. I'm going to take this downstairs to my belt sander, and where you can see these irregular edges, I'm going to actually sand those down. It'll kind of leave a burnished effect, especially if the belt sander is moving fast enough. It'll almost melt the leather together into one solid piece. This is actually how you see cowboy boot heels. They're just stacks of leather. Leather washer wraps, different things like that. That's how they're done, is you just burnish them with heat and a minimal abrasion. So I'll do that, but before I do that, on the back side here I've got all this exposed stitching. Now at a Renaissance fair especially, when this is going to be worn on a belt, it's going to be bumping up and down on chainmail, which is the armor that my wife is going to be wearing. So what will happen is that'll actually wear away at the stitching here, and we don't want that to happen because then this will separate. So to do that, I made one final piece, and that's this. It's just a protective slip that will slip in here, and I can just rubber cement that on, so it'll completely hide the stitching on the bottom. And since the stitching on the bottom isn't load-bearing in any way, shape, or form, it's perfectly fine to do that. You can even put a thin piece of leather across the top here if you wanted to protect the stitching here. Another way to do it, though, is there's a tool called a saddle stitcher's groover, where it'll actually cut a thin groove in the leather. Now, I don't actually happen to have one of those anymore, so I couldn't use one here on this project. But what it does is it creates a small groove, so the stitching actually rests below the surface of the leather. But you can see here that the dagger fits in very snugly. I'm actually holding it upside down, shaking the heck out of it. It's not going anywhere, but it form fits. Now over time this leather will stretch a little bit, especially with some moisture. It'll stretch a little bit and allow it to slide in there just a little bit easier. Every time you pull it in and out, the longer you store it in this, the better off it'll be. The only problem is this being a high carbon steel blade. If you're going to store a high carbon steel blade in a sheath, always remember to put a thin coat of oil when you put it up. If you're going to put it up for an extended period of time, like more than just a week or so, because what happens is the sheath will actually trap moisture inside here, and it'll promote rusting on the blade, and we don't want that. So there you have it, though, guys. That's just pretty much how the sheath gets done. If you don't have a belt sander you can use, you can always just take a very, very sharp knife or razor and just very, very gently cut any excess leather, any of that uneven leather off of there, and you're done. But there you have it, guys. There's a leather sheath, how to make one so it'll hold up for a good amount of time.